Folks, my guest today is Albany Rojas of Rojas Law Office, and we're going to be talking about immigration law. Welcome,
Yes.
Albany.
Thank you, Jeff. Happy to be here.
All right. So what you guys don't know is that this is our second run at this. We suffered a disaster last time around. But we're picking up the pieces of my broken heart because my camera completely died on me. And we're going to come back stronger than ever.
Yes.
So diving into the topic, we're talking about immigration law. Albany is an immigration attorney. And as we were talking about last time, I don't think people will understand just how broad the topic of immigration is. I mean, what are we talking about? Asylum here is one kind of immigration law, and then you got your business and investor visas, right? And then family law, family visas, family-based visas, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. And maybe that's what a lot of people think about when they think about immigration law. They don't realize just how broad an area of law immigration is. You think, well, listen, if I marry a foreigner, then I'm going to have to get a spousal visa. And that's correct. And we're going to dive into that. But we're going to try and go a little bit into the nuances that maybe you haven't thought about.
Correct.
Things, for example, such as a fiancé visa. All right. So for starters, Albany, why don't you tell us just a bit about yourself and how you come here today?
Well, I'm Albany, like the city, Albany. I'm an immigration attorney in the U.S., but I'm also a Venezuelan attorney. I moved here to the U.S. in 2016 and went back to law school, passed the Florida bar, and started my own law firm, Rojas Law Office. I do immigration, and immigration, it is a very broad part of law. There's, like you said, asylum, business visa, family-based petitions, and crimination, what we call, people who has crimes and are immigrants that they call crimination.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So there's also humanitarian visas, VAWAs, U visas. So I'm here in Palm Beach, Florida, but I do take cases in the whole country because it is federal law, and I love it. This is my passion.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forgot to mention that. So in the United States, unlike most countries that I'm aware of, we have to be licensed, generally speaking, we have to be licensed in each individual state where we practice. So, for example, my law firm has a presence in California and in Florida, but I'm only licensed in Florida.
Yep.
I can't practice in California other than certain exceptions like federal tax law or immigration. So that's a very good point that I'm glad you brought up. So even if you're outside of Florida, Albany can still help you with your immigration matters. Okay, so now as for the visas themselves. Now, like we were saying before, I think a lot of people, when they think about immigration, they think about spousal visas, how to get a green card for their spouse. But there is a step before that that I think you're going to tell us about.
Yes, sometimes people start with the fiancé visa, which is the K-1 visa. This is very common for people who meet their partners, their significant others overseas. So they fall in love, especially nowadays with, online dating and all this stuff. So they go over there, they meet. But this individual who is not a U.S. citizen, does not have a tourist visa or a lawful way to come. So they get engaged. And the U.S. citizen, you have to be a U.S. citizen. A lawful permanent resident cannot apply for a fiancé visa. Okay. The U.S. citizen can apply in front of USCIS, which is the Immigration Services, for a K-1 visa. So basically saying, I met this person, I'm in love with her or with him, and I'm going to get married as soon as she comes to the U.S. Once this is approved and immigration sees that it's a lawful relationship, the person, the foreigner, the individual who is overseas, they go to an interview in their home country, so in the embassy in their home country. And the immigration officer in the embassy will stamp their passport with this visa, and they will enter lawfully into the U.S. And once they're here, they have 90 days to get married. So immigration gave you this opportunity to come as long as you turn your fiancé into your spouse within those 90 days. So then it's easier because you just need to adjust status. You just need to request for a green card. So you can skip the family petition step. So it is a great process to do if it's a very serious relationship. Everything is organized from the first step, and they have good legal representation and legal advice. K-1 visas are a great way to do it.
Great. Okay. Now, all right. So let's say that you come over, or the spouse comes over, fiance,
The fiance, yeah.
The fiance comes over, and then things don't work out. Within the 90 days, the relationship falls apart. Can the fiance or former fiance then just leave the country without any repercussions?
Yes, they can leave the country within those 90 days. The important thing is that they don't overstay their visas. They even can apply for a work authorization within those 90 days.
Oh.
So they can have that work authorization while they apply for the adjustment of status. But if the relationship doesn't work, they can go back to their home country, because pretty much it's a non-immigrant visa until they turn it into an adjustment of status, a request to be a lawful permanent resident.
Okay, very interesting. Now, I know that with immigration law, and we're going to be talking a lot about this, but there's a lot of strategy involved.
Of course.
A lot of different ways you can do things, and then there are pros and cons, and so that's one of the reasons I think, at least it's my impression, that it's so important, if you have an immigration matter, that you don't go it alone. There are way too many decisions that need to be made that have important ramifications.
Yes.
So, for example, let me ask you here on the fiance visas. Is it all advantage? I mean, would anyone want to take advantage of a fiance visa, or are there any times when it might make more sense not to do that?
First of all, I want to clarify that first step about that first point about a strategy. A lot of people, including attorneys, believe that immigration is just preparing forms. So let's just prepare a form. Any person can do it. I can do it myself. A paralegal can do it. A notario can do it. In our culture, Hispanic culture, is very normal. Fees are lower, etc. But the thing is that marking the wrong X in a form can ruin a person's life. There's time to file things. There's a big umbrella of agencies within immigration. It's not just USCIS. There's Border Patrol, there's DOJ, there's EOIR. There's a bunch of different people fighting with each other for these immigrants. So you need to be very strategic and be very aware of no accruing unlawful presence, not having an unlawful entry. What's the difference between being admitted or being paroled? So it is very complex. And it is important to hire an attorney. Going back to your question, is it better not to do an K-1 sometimes? Well, it depends of the strength of the relationship, I think. Obviously, again, online dating, mail brides, everything, even human trafficking can use this visa sometimes. So you need to be confident in this relationship. There's even a rule within the manual, the immigration manual for this visa, that you need to meet your fiance within the last 2 years, at least once in person. I think once in person is pretty much very easy to comply. But immigration is trying to prevent this type of fraud. Two people, they have never met each other, applying for a fiance visa, that's not going to work. There's a waiver for it, but I don't think it's the ideal situation. So me as an attorney, I would much rather to see this visa for a strong relationship, that they are truly pretty sure that they're going to get married.
Okay, I hadn't even thought about that really. So, and I know you're going to be talking about the spousal visas next, and of course a big part of that is the bona fides, right?
Yes.
Proving that it's not a sham marriage. This might be a dumb question, but is there any way that using that fiance visa, say, for somebody that hasn't met or met only briefly, and they don't have that history of pictures showing that they've traveled together, whatever. I mean, does that make a difference? Is that?
It does. It is very common. Let's say we have a U.S. citizen who is from Hispanic origin or is a naturalized citizen. So they travel frequently to their home country, and they met somebody there and they get married there. So they want to do a spousal visa. They want to petition for their spouse, but they don't have bona fide documents. They don't have joint documents because one of the partners lives there and the other one lives here. They don't have marital assets. They don't have bank accounts because the other person is over there. So in that situation, they should have consulted an attorney, and the attorney will have said, no, don't get married there. Do the K-1 visa. Bring lawfully your fiance here, and let's just do adjustment of status, because right now I don't have any documents to show that this is a lawful marriage. It can be done with the right strategy and the right attorney. It can be done, plane tickets, statements, affidavits of other people, family pictures. I can put together a good file, and I have had in the past approvals of those type of cases, but they are difficult cases.
Yeah. So getting back again to the strategy, I mean, the attorney who's been through this many, many times can anticipate problems down the road and can give you some advice and help you prepare so you don't get hung up.
Yeah.
And then again, we're talking about immigration, which is, we're talking about people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about immigration. Any area of law, it's important, but maybe it's even more important to have an attorney, not only an attorney who's knowledgeable, but and in your case, I think it's especially nice that you yourself are an immigrant.
I am.
And so you can...
I can understand.
Yeah, you've been through the entire process yourself.
Yes.
So you have that experience behind you.
Yeah.
And then maybe you're just a little more empathetic as well.
Correct. I do take pride of, being every place of the equation. I am the immigrant. I'm still an immigrant. I always will be. I was a paralegal for a long time because I put myself through law school while being a paralegal, and now I'm the attorney. So I know what's the feeling of that, stress and anxiety of losing everything for a piece of paper.
Okay, so turning now to the main topic, which is our spousal visas. Tell us a little bit about that. For example, who can petition for a spousal visa? A U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident. And it is very important. A lot of Americans don't know how complicated this can be. I am frequently meeting Americans, getting married with an immigrant, and they're like, we're here for her green card. And they are expecting, one little form, and just 3 months or 2 months they're having the green card. It's so the lack of knowledge is so rampant that a lot of them have even planned trips, and they will be like, oh no, but I have plane tickets for Europe within a month. And I'm like, no, she cannot leave the country. It is a very complicated topic. If you are USC, a U.S. citizen, it's going to be easier. You're going to have more rights. The process is going to be faster. But if you're a lawful permanent resident, it's going to be slower. You're in a different category. It is very important to take into consideration in which category you are, because depending on who is petitioning and who is the beneficiary, the category is going to change. And the prerogative, the rights, the times, and even the fees can change depending on the category. So it's also important to look into the beneficiary. This beneficiary is here in the U.S. Is it back in their home country? Is there an immigration record that I need to look at? Is there a criminal record that I need to look at? Did they were they admitted, or they enter without inspection? Are they accruing unlawful presence? For example, if you accrue unlawful presence, if you enter with a tourist visa and you overstay your visa, you are accruing unlawful presence. But you get married with a U.S. citizen, it's not going to be a problem. You can just go ahead and do the process. But if you get married with a lawful permanent resident, that is going to be a problem, and you're going to need a waiver because it's a different category. So maybe as an immigration attorney, I need to turn your husband or wife, who is a lawful permanent resident, to a U.S. citizen before I can do any family petition, because my really strategy is going to be much better if a U.S. citizen is the one petitioning for you. So who can petition? Yes, a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, but who is the beneficiary and what are all the circumstances surrounding this case? Yeah. So a lawful permanent resident, that's somebody who has a green card,
yes,
so-called green card, but isn't actually a citizen.
No.
And the rules are different.
Completely different.
They can both petition for a spouse, yes, but the rules and the conditions and the limitations are really different. That's a great point. Okay, so what would you say are some of the biggest challenges involved in, bringing a spouse to the United States, and then actually getting the approval?
Obviously, marriage is, a relationship that you can fake. That's the truth. You cannot fake being somebody's mother, somebody's sibling, or somebody's son or daughter. But you can fake being husband and wife. So fraud is the biggest red flag in marriage visas. That's why it's so important to comply with all the joint documents and beyond. I tend to be very strict with my clients. They get frustrated with me because I don't send out the file until I believe this is a very, very strong case, especially when there's an age difference, same-sex marriages, a lot of divorces prior to this marriage. So again, it's a strategy thing. So bona fide documents, there's need to be money, either debts or assets in common. So financials are a huge deal for immigration. It doesn't matter that you don't own a house, but you need to have a lease, at least with both names on it. Cars, registrations, life insurance, where each other's are the benefits, health insurances, emergency contacts, memberships, you name it. I mean, at least I need to file 10 joint documents per couple. And children, they don't count, because you can have a child with somebody and don't have a relationship with that person, and that person maybe he wants to help you to give you papers for the sake of the child. No, you need to be a couple. So it doesn't matter that you have 2 kids together, but you have been living separately for the last 5 to 10 years. Immigration is going to catch that. And recently, when like social media, there's security cameras everywhere, it's so easy to leave a digital print everywhere. Immigration is going to follow that. So I had a case where they were requesting the ring video, like the doorbell video, to see if that husband was coming to their house every day after work, like a normal family will. So
it's
also
harder and harder, huh?
it's getting harder and harder because we are living our lives in the display. Everybody knows where we are, what we're doing.
Social media,
you're taking a photo, and it's easy to find the location of that photo. So you can now use old photos and say, oh no, this was when we were married. No, it wasn't. I can find the tag, the place, the pin, whatever. So it is complicated. So it's the hardest family-based visa to get approved because you can fake marriage.
Yeah, that's very interesting. All right, so like people might think, we just show up and say we're married and we do all the things that married couples normally do, and they feel like maybe you can just make that fly. But the examiners, they're not idiots. This has been going on for a long time. So they have their little tricks, as you say. And some of these things I hadn't even heard, I had not thought about or heard about, like the new technology nowadays. And then the fact that just with social media, our lives are more in the public, more accessible than ever before. So it's got to be it's giving them new tools to use. What are some of the other tricks that, I shouldn't say tricks. What are some of the other methods?
They are tricks. Okay. They are tricks because they believe they are being tricked. So they're using that against you. I mean, they are not on your side. They are not on your side. The fact that this is not litigation doesn't mean that there is no 2 parts of this case. There are. They are
an adversarial process.
Huh? It is adversarial. People tend to forget that. Well, interviews are very funny too. You need to go there with the officer, and they can put you in separate rooms and ask you very personal questions. It gets very personal. You can go with an attorney, but since it's not a judicial situation, you cannot intervene as much. I mean, you can only intervene if your if your client's rights are being violated. But you cannot, talk in their behalf. They have to talk themselves because it is a very personal questions. Let's say they ask, where is the trash can in the kitchen located?
Right.
What kind of contraception do you guys use? Who gave the first kiss? It gets very, very intimate, and it can be very
And you better
awkward.
have the same answers.
You better have the same answer. So,
Correct.
romantic questions, personal questions. Does your spouse has any surgeries? Where is the scar located? How big is the scar?
Yeah.
So, you have to be married to this person to know these answers.
That's really funny.
It is.
Hey, let me ask you something. You made me think of something while you were saying that. I mean, I've kind of wondered before in the past that you can have an attorney attend the interview with you, as you were saying, but the attorney's limited in what he or she can actually do. Is there? What's your opinion about this? I mean, is there any sense that if somebody is bringing an attorney, it's it's because they're worried or they have something to hide? Does any of that factor in, or you don't see it that way?
I don't see it that way. First of all, it's a nerve-wracking situation, and the client feels a lot better when they have their attorney by their side. Just getting into a USCIS field office can be it can give you a lot of anxiety. That's the immigrant me talking. I know what it is to be an immigrant and going to one of these agencies. Even when you did nothing wrong, you're like, they're gonna deport my ass back. So you're like very nervous,
sure.
and when your attorney is there with you, you feel better. Also, again, these officers are trained not to approve. So
they're looking for ways to deny
of
the
course,
application.
it's like insurance. They don't want to pay. I mean, immigration officers, they don't want to approve. You need an attorney by your side, so you make sure that if you comply with every step of the rules of the immigration manual, they have to approve. So I do strongly recommend, especially when the immigrant has some sort of immigration situation, some sort of criminal record, or they enter without inspection, or there's a age difference. They got a lot of RFEs, requests for evidence. So you need to have a very organized file. So when they say you didn't send this, you can reply, yes, I did. This is the date, etc.
Yeah.
And clients get very nervous.
Right. So that's the sort of thing that can throw off a client, right?
For sure.
And I suppose that's maybe a tactic that the examiners use. All right, now let me ask you this. So I don't want to get into a whole bashing fest because it probably would be easy to do.
It is.
And I'm sure people in the audience could tell stories. I mean, I married an immigrant, so I went through that process.
Yes.
I could tell you about the personality type that interviewed us. It was absurd. The whole thing was absurd. Does it, we didn't have an attorney at that time. Is it maybe helpful to have an attorney in the room to just sort of keep them honest a little bit? I mean, is there any of that?
Yes, for sure. And I'm not saying that there's a lot of gray areas in immigration. Discretionary decisions are allowed in most of the processes of immigration. So officers have a lot of power, and a lot of them are not even attorneys. A lot of the officers, immigration officers. So having somebody there that knows the law, and then can, this is the book, just stick by the book, it is very important. And I think that it is essential. And, again, it's not a bashing fest, but we're dealing with different cultures. We're dealing with a very sensitive subject, which is immigration. A very people can get very passionate about this subject,
Sure.
and they can die because of their opinions. So they're human beings too.
Yeah.
So I'd rather to have an objective person, which is an attorney, who has to comply by the bar rules and make the officer comply too.
Yeah. No, very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are human beings, and they have their moods.
Yes.
I mean, kind of like judges, right?
Yes, correct.
Only these people have power over your entire life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is bizarre. Okay. All right. So let's say then you've gone through this harrowing experience of an interview and you get through it. You have the conditional approval.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean? What's a conditional?
So depending on the length or the ages, the years of the marriage, you're going to get a full residency or a conditional residency. If your marriage is under 2 years, you're going to get a conditional lawful permanent residency card, which is for 2 years. So pretty much the government is saying, you know what, you just got married. We are not completely sure that this is going to last. So I'm going to give you this card for 2 years. And we'll meet again in 2 years. And if you guys are still married, I can turn that 2 years card into a 10-year card. You, again, need to provide to me joint documents, affidavits, and show that you guys still living together, sharing finances, maybe made 1 or 2 kids in the process. And then I will give you your 10-year green card. But if you've been married for over 2 years, they're going to just go ahead and straight give you your 10-year green card. And the removal of conditions is a very unfair or hectic process, because it's funny because you can request your naturalization, your civic test to become a citizen within 3 years of your green card if it's based on marriage and you're still married. So it comes the time that you've been a lawful permanent resident for 2 years. So you apply for the removal of conditions. It takes so long, then it becomes 3 years. So now you can apply for citizenship. So a good attorney can, make some sort of strategy so you don't have to continue to wait, because there is no point on turning that green card into a 10-year green card where I already can become a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
There's a specific process that you can do. It doesn't work all the time. It doesn't work for everyone. You have to be eligible to be a USC to a United States citizen.
Right. And you've already explained why there's some advantages to doing that.
Of course.
You could just get your green card theoretically and then just live out your life as a permanent resident. But as you've already explained, there's some important advantages to being a citizen.
Of course.
Yeah.
The only immigration status that I don't want to say it cannot, but it's very, very difficult to be taken away is naturalization, becoming a naturalized citizen.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah. All right. So, I did have a question about that, the conditional status. So, you know how they give you this window of time that you can apply to have the conditions removed? I always wondered, what if you miss that deadline? What are the consequences to that?
There's some exceptions. There's some timelines that you can, explain to the government what happened, but you have to do it within the 90 days.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes they will send you a letter saying, hello, your green card is going to expire. You better do something to renew it or to turn it into a 10-year green card. But sometimes they don't, and people forget. And
you can actually lose your status?
You can actually lose your status, yes,
wow.
for sure. Yes.
Wow, that's hardcore. Yeah.
It is, and it's expensive, and it's basically doing it all over again. It's basically doing another adjustment. So, sometimes you need to have a good strategy just to prevent that from happening and keep in touch with your client.
Yeah. And it is like the timing on it is weird. Like you can't apply too soon, but then it sounds like you better not apply late. So.
Yeah, and while you're waiting, you can become a citizen, but you can't because we haven't responded to this. Yeah. So you're in this weird limbo, and that's when the attorney comes in.
All right. Well, so what about derivatives? What are we talking about there?
So for the K-1 visa, unmarried children under 21. Immigration is funny about kids' ages. Sometimes you're an adult when you're 18. Sometimes you're an adult when you're 21. And for adoptions, for example, it's under 16. So age can be also funny in immigration. So for K-1 Fianc Visas, the beneficiaries' children, unmarried and under 21, can also have a visa to come to the U.S. And they can adjust status within the night. They have to adjust status within the time frame that the parents did. They cannot come before the fiancé. They can come after. They don't have to come together, but never before. And for the marriage visa, if the petitioner is a U.S. citizen and the marriage occurred before the child turned 18, so lawfully you are the step parent because he's a minor, you can directly petition for that child. It's not going to be an actual derivative situation.
Oh, wow. That's
Yes.
interesting.
So the two processes are going to be separate, even though they're both based on marriage, on the same marriage.
Are there
So
advantages or disadvantages? to
there's
one way or the other?
advantages because let's say that the parent has some immigration wrinkles that we need to go through.
Okay.
The step parent can just go ahead and adjust the
Wow.
kid before the kid turns 18 and all the inadmissibility bar kicks in.
That's really intelligent. So
Yeah.
that again is what we're talking about. It's all strategy.
It's
with
all
immigration.
strategy. It's
Yeah.
a puzzle. You move something here to make this work, and then you put it here. I love it.
Wow, that's really interesting. So so that's why, as much as I don't have anything against paralegals running around out there
Yeah.
and notarios who are doing the same thing, but
It's not the same, no.
these matters are too important and it's too intricate, and the strategies that you adopt make such a huge difference, or can make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
That it's not the sort of thing you want to play around with.
Yeah, and the thing is that paralegals are amazing. I was a paralegal for a long time. Paralegals are so important to a law firm. They are the heart of a law firm, but they're meant to work under an attorney. The thing is, when the paralegal is an independent entity, they cannot provide legal advice. So how do you make the decisions if you cannot provide legal advice? Do you have the client coming with a strategy? Do you have the client saying, I want this and that, and this is the form, and you need to do A, B, and C? Then you can do it as a paralegal. But if you're telling the client, this is what you need to do, this is the time for applying, these are the requirements, don't do this, you don't qualify for that, that's legal advice, as that's the unauthorized practice of the law.
Yeah. And maybe they're excellent in what they do.
A lot of them are excellent.
Yeah.
A lot of them are amazing, even better than some attorneys.
Okay.
But they can't.
But maybe not,
They can't. And we have the bar right here looking at us. Yeah. And, I'm going to take away your license in a minute, but they don't have anyone saying that to them.
Exactly.
So it becomes a free-for-all. So.
Yeah. Right. I hesitate to say this, but it's worth keeping in mind. So if you go to a paralegal or just whatever, some clinic, anybody out there who's unlicensed, and you get your help filling out the forms, and you don't get the advice, and you're not thinking strategies, or you get bad advice, advice that shouldn't have been given, and it was given, and it was bad advice.
Correct.
These people just move on with their lives. You have no recourse. I mean,
Nada. Nada.
Yeah.
There's no license to take away.
Exactly.
There's no student loans like attorneys.
Yeah. There's no regulating body. The mistake was made. Your life is messed up now, but, there's nothing you can do about it.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so great. Well, that mostly covers the visa stuff, but you did touch on something earlier that I kind of wanted to follow up on because I'm not sure people understand. How could you understand? It's such a mess. When we're talking about immigration, we're talking about a number of different agencies that kind of work together, or they're supposed to work together, but they really can do whatever the hell they want. And then you got different personality types.
Correct.
So we got like the USCIS is kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
That's where you send your forms and all that. And they do approve or deny visas, but they're not the only ones. Because now when you actually get to the airport and then you have that scene where you're faced off with customs, and that's Homeland Security. That's not the USCIS. That's a totally different agency. And then, of course, you got your consulate officers. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the interplay between these different agencies?
And we have judges who are funny because they're judges, but they are not the judicial power. No, they're still under DOJ. They're still executive power. EOIR is a DOJ agency. So this is a judge who is within the same umbrella of agencies. Okay. So you actually, I don't know how to, there's a saying in Spanish, I don't know if there's an equivalent in English, but they pay themselves and they return the money to themselves. It's just, se pagan y se dan el vuelto. Because, you don't have any recourse to control, there's no balance of powers,
Okay.
All the agencies are under the executive. So you have EOIR, which is the court, which is the immigration judge. Everybody in removal proceedings is in the immigration judge jurisdiction. So you cannot do a bunch of things in front of USCIS. You can do a few, but not a lot, because this immigrant is under the decisions of an immigration judge. So sometimes you need to close proceedings or terminate proceedings, depending on the case, based on something that you are doing in front of USCIS. But sometimes you're missing information that Border Patrol has. And even though we have Freedom of Information Act, sometimes Border Patrol doesn't want to give you this information. And you're saying, please give me the information. I have this client that I can do this in front of USCIS, but immigration judge has the power over him, has jurisdiction, so I need to close this case in order to do this. So please give me the paper. And they're all immigration.
Is that a FOIA request? Is that what you
You
use?
can do a FOIA request in front of every of these agencies, Freedom of Information Act. But the law says that they are not obligated to give you everything in your file. There's some stuff they are allowed to withhold because of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated. They're like siblings that sometimes they like each other and they work together and they are all the same children of the same dad or mom. Sometimes they hate each other and they act like they are not from the same parents and they don't want to talk to each other, always to the inconvenience of the immigrant.
Yeah. That was the analogy you used last time.
Yeah,
I love that.
I just
They're like
remember
siblings.
that.
That's fantastic.
So, sometimes you need to play with times and tell to the immigration judge, can you please give me this continuance of this hearing, because your brother
It's holding things up, right?
needs to send me a receipt so you can close this process.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, sometimes they will give you a continuance for 3 years and you can, fight with USCIS but sometimes they won't.
Yeah.
And you are explaining to them, it's your guys' fault. And they're like, oh, well,
That's a
sorry.
different department.
Deportation order, go back.
Oof, wow.
And then ICE comes into place, which is La Migra, is police. So ICE is very inaccessible and lawfully inaccessible. I mean, they have a lot of rules that protect them from talking to the attorney. And it's hard to talk to an ICE officer. It's hard to talk to the attorneys, to DHS attorneys, which are the government's attorneys that fight against you in immigration court. A lot of them will reply to their emails and they honestly want to solve the situation and they're looking for the truth. And a lot of them just want to build up numbers. So same with this. I mean, I guess a criminal defense attorney can say the same than me, but, it can be very complicated. And also immigration is about trends. There's, political times that these type of processes or these countries are being favored. And there's political times or administrations that it's going to be impossible for that to get approved.
Yeah.
And the borders change, everything change. That's another thing about having an immigration attorney. You have to have an attorney that stay up, like, on top of the news, on the changing law, and you have also state law. Because even though that immigration law is federal law, what happens if you have a crime in the state of Florida? Is that a misdemeanor or is that a felony? It's going to depend on state law.
Oh, wow.
And depending on how state law defines that crime, immigration is going to react to you.
I see.
So maybe driving without a license is a misdemeanor in Florida and a felony in Georgia.
Wow.
So the immigrant is going to have two separate problems. And they're going to, take away their TPS in Georgia, but not in Florida.
Boy, that's really interesting. I hadn't
It's
thought
a
about
lot.
all that. Yeah, that's the thing. I guess I just wanted to draw people's attention because I guess when we think of immigration, you just think of it as being one big, entity, and it's not. It's
not.
broken into a number of different agencies who are like siblings.
Who are like siblings.
Sometimes they work things out,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And maybe they have good intentions, or maybe you catch them on a bad day.
Yeah.
That could be too. But it's massive. You know, there's so much data, there's so much going on that it's probably just as a logistical matter, difficult for these agencies to really cooperate, even if they wanted to.
Yes, and you know, migration is a human phenomenon, and it happens in the U.S. and it happens in every country, in every region of the world from prehistoric times. The thing is that United States of America has a huge wave of immigrants coming in constantly. And I also understand that these agencies are trying to keep up with the changes, the constant changes in immigrant waves, the type of immigrants. Let's say Venezuelans. I'm Venezuelan. 10 years ago, you didn't have Venezuelans coming through the border.
Right.
Practically at all. Maybe 5 per year. Now you have a huge wave of Venezuelans because of, you know, political and social conditions overseas. Yeah. So the agencies are trying to move as fast as they can. And sometimes they just cannot catch up.
And politically and society, maybe society has more compassion for immigrants of certain parts of the world than they do for immigrants for whatever reason.
100%.
Yeah, and all that makes a
difference. That's very accurate.
Yeah. Well, Albany, thank you so much for joining us. This has been very informative. And we are going to do an entire series of videos focusing on different visas that we think will interest you. So keep your eyes out for that. Albany, tell people where they can find you.
Well, I am located in West Palm Beach, Florida, but again, I can cover cases all over the country. I'm in the Space Connect offices in West Palm Beach. Yes, I'm a member. I love it here. And can I say my phone number?
Sure. There are no rules.
Okay, I don't know. You can contact me at 561-633-7368. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's Rojas Law Office based in West Palm Beach.
Yes,
right?
sir.
All right, my dear. Thank you so much. Be sure to join us next time for more.